You wake up in the dark and for 1/2 second, just one, you forget where you are. Then the smell hits you. Mud and rot and something chemical that coats the back of your throat and never quite leaves. Then the sound, that low, continuous thunder that has been going on so long your brain has started to classify it as silence. Then the man next to you shifts in his sleep and his elbow finds your ribs and you remember. You are 22 years old. You are 6 feet below the surface of a French field. And in approximately 4 hours, someone is going to blow a whistle and ask you to climb out. By the summer of 1916, the Western Front had become something no military planner had imagined and no war correspondent could fully explain to the people back home. It stretched 440 miles from the English Channel to the Swiss border, a continuous wound cut across the face of Europe. Between them, a strip of devastated earth called No Man's Land, that in some places measured no more than 50 yards across. 50 yards, the length of half a city block. And yet crossing it had already cost hundreds of thousands of lives. This is a story about one ordinary soldier, one of the 8 million men who lived for months or years at a time underground. This is his day. Stand to begins at first light. Every morning, without exception. At 4:30, the NCO moves through the trench, waking every man, a hand on the shoulder,
wakey,
a
wakey.
low word, no ceremony. The soldiers rise from their funk holes, shallow scrapes cut into the trench wall, just wide enough for a man to lie in, and take their positions on the fire step. They stand there with rifles ready and wait. This is the most dangerous time of day, dawn, when attackers could use the last of the darkness to advance unseen. Both sides know this. Both sides stand to every single morning and watch the grey light build over the devastated landscape beyond the parapet, waiting for shapes to emerge from the mist. The ground between the trenches has been so thoroughly shelled that it no longer resembles Earth. It is a churning sea of overlapping craters, each one filled with brown water that reflects the grey sky. Rusted barbed wire stretches in tangled rows across the entire width of it, and in the wire and in the craters and half submerged in the mud, there are men. Stand to ends.
Stand down, men!
No attack comes. It rarely does. The men step down from the fire step, and the day, such as it is, begins. Breakfast in the trenches is a negotiation between what exists and what is edible. A cook somewhere behind the lines has prepared something, bully beef, which is tinned corned beef with the texture of wet clay. The food arrives in large metal containers carried forward through the communication trenches by ration parties, and by the time it reaches the front line, it has been travelling for an hour and is stone cold. The tea, at least, is hot. Men have written home about the tea more than almost anything else.
Brew, this.
Its warmth, its normalcy,
Best part
the
of the
way
day.
it creates for approximately 4 minutes the feeling that the world is still the same world it was before August 1914. The walls collapse. The duckboards sink into the mud and need repositioning. The sandbags rot and burst and must be replaced. Pumps run continuously to keep the worst sections from flooding entirely. The thing that nobody back home understands, the thing that the newspapers cannot print because it does not make for stirring copy, is the boredom. A soldier in the line might go days or weeks without seeing a German, without being directly involved in any fighting at all. While the artillery exchanges overhead like weather, he writes letters. The army provides paper, and the army censors what he writes, which means the letters home are a strange kind of communication. He writes to his mother that he is well. He writes to his girl that he thinks of her every day. He does not write about the smell. He does not write about what he saw in the wire at dawn. He does not write about the man in the funk hole next to his who stopped sleeping 3 weeks ago and has not been the same since. Instead, he plays cards. He picks lice from his uniform with the focused patience of a man who has accepted this as simply part of the day. Today,
Look
is
alive,
not a
men! We
quiet
move out
day.
shortly.
At 2 in the
Tonight,
afternoon,
we
the
take the left
sergeant
ridge.
pulls a
No
group
lights,
of 12
bayonets
men
only.
aside.
Settle your affairs
The
now.
purpose
Point
of a
AH2
trench
will be
raid
the
is
primary
to
objective.
cross no man's
Synchronized
land,
advance commence
enter the
0400.
German trenches,
The wire here
take
is
a
reported
prisoner
as
for
heavily damaged.
interrogation,
Success depends
and
on absolute
return.
speed and precision.
For the raid, they will leave behind their rifles, too long and too loud for close fighting
Check your
in a
bayonets,
trench.
men!
They go in with bayonets and clubs and in some cases knives. They blacken their faces and the backs of their hands with burnt cork. The waiting between the briefing and the raid is its own kind of hell. A man's mind does the arithmetic. He thinks about the wire, he thinks about the German sentries.
Get ready to
he
move.
thinks about the flares, star shells that the Germans fire into the sky all night long at irregular intervals, turning no man's land white as day for 30 seconds at a time. He thinks about home, not in a sentimental way, in the specific, physical way of a man who suddenly needs to remember what a kitchen smells like. The flares go up at midnight. The 12 men go over the top. 3 do not come back. The front at night belongs to the dead and the working parties. In the darkness, men from opposing armies sometimes come within yards of each other, and by unspoken mutual agreement, simply do not acknowledge it. The soldier returns from the raid just before 3 in the morning. He has a cut across his left
They are right
forearm
behind
from
me.
barbed wire. He sits on the fire step in the dark, and a corporal he has known since training offers him a cigarette without saying anything. He takes it. They sit together in the darkness while the artillery mutters and the flares pop and hiss overhead, illuminating the dead ground and the dead men and the wire, and then dying, and the darkness coming back. He thinks about the whistle he heard at 4 in the afternoon 2 months ago, the whistle that sent the first wave of the Somme over the top on the 1st of July. He was not in that wave. 60,000 British casualties in a single day. He finishes the cigarette. He finds his funk hole. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow, stand to at 4:30. The smell will be there when he wakes up. The thunder will be there. The lice will be there. The tea, at least, will be hot. The First World War killed 17 million people, wounded 20 million more. The human brain was not built for 17 million. It was built for one man on a fire step in the dark, sharing a cigarette with someone who understood without needing to be told. What the Western Front produced was a generation of young men who had seen something that could not be unseen. Who came home to a world that wanted to celebrate victory and found that celebration very hard to locate inside themselves. They didn't talk about it much,
Thomas?
but they were there. In the mud and the noise and the cold tea and the lice and the letters home that said everything was fine. They were there, and they were 22 years old, and they climbed out when the whistle blew every time. They were there.